This is a demonstration of problem 641, evaluating turnover and non-traditional efficiency ratios across industries. The following information is taken from publicly traded retailers. The data came from the balance sheet, income statement, and item 2 on the company's Form 10-K filings, and we're going to use this information to answer the requirements. So the problem has given us for 6 retailers: AutoZone, Costco, Home Depot, Lowe's, O'Reilly, and Walmart, their revenue, cost of goods sold, average inventory, retail square footage, and number of stores. In Part A, it asks us to compute the days inventory outstanding for each company. So to compute days inventory outstanding, we first need to compute inventory turnover. So I have copied for all of the companies from the information given the cost of goods sold and their average inventory. To compute inventory turnover, you divide the cost of goods sold by the average inventory, and I've done that for each one of the companies. And then to compute the days inventory outstanding, you take 365 and divide it by the inventory turnover. So I have computed that for each one of the 6 companies. In the B portion, it asks us to compute the gross profit margin for each company. So again, I have copied information that we were given in the problem, the revenue and the cost of goods sold, to compute the gross profit. So for each company, revenue minus cost of goods sold equals gross profit. Then to compute the gross profit margin, I have taken the gross profit for each company and divided it by their revenue and gotten the gross profit margin for each of the 6 companies. So now we have their days inventory outstanding and which is their productivity, and we have their gross profit margin, which is their profitability. And now we're going to compare the companies on those 2 measures. So the C portion asks us to compare the days inventory outstanding and the gross profit margin for each of the 3 combinations of competitors. And what do we observe and how are the ratios related? So I have rearranged the companies to show them next to their competitor. So we have AutoZone and O'Reilly first, Walmart and Costco, and then Home Depot and Lowe's. And those are the 3 groups of competitors. So what do we notice for AutoZone and O'Reilly? We notice that their days inventory outstanding is very high. So what does it mean to have 291 days of inventory outstanding? It means that on average, AutoZone's products stay in their store 291 days, and that's almost a year. And O'Reilly's is just slightly lower than that at 267 days. What do we see when we look at their gross profit margin? Their gross profit margin is over 50%. So they're making over 50% gross profit on the items that they sell on average, which is quite high. So it looks like that what is happening at AutoZone and O'Reilly is they have slow-moving items, or slow-moving items that they make a lot of money off of. Next, let's look at Walmart and Costco. Walmart and Costco sell their products much faster than AutoZone and O'Reilly, but they have a lower gross profit margin. And Costco has a very low gross profit margin. They are only making 14% on average on their items, but they're moving them quite quickly. The average time that their items stay is 31 days, so about a month. Next, we look at Home Depot and Lowe's. They keep their items more in the middle. So Home Depot sells their items in 69 days and Lowe's 90 days. Their gross profit margins are very similar. So we can see that Home Depot is beating Lowe's in their productivity. And there's information, if you've read in your problem, in your textbook, that Home Depot is going to extreme measures to improve their supply chain, so their days inventory outstanding has gone down. Okay, and then in the D portion, it asks us to compute the following two non-traditional efficiency metrics: revenue per square foot and revenue per store. And what do we observe? So now I have copied from the information the revenue for each of the 6 companies, the retail square footage for the companies, and the number of stores for each company. And I have gotten the revenue per square feet by dividing revenue by their retail square footage, and I've gotten revenue per store by dividing the revenue by the number of stores. So what can we learn from these calculations, or by looking at these? Some of this kind of tells us some of what we've already learned from days inventory outstanding and gross profit margin. If you look at AutoZone and O'Reilly, you can see that they have somewhat lower, pretty low revenue per square foot, even though they have fairly small stores. Also, their revenue per store is quite smaller. And we know that that is due to the fact that they keep their inventory much longer, but again, we know that they sell it at a higher gross profit margin. The next thing that we notice is that the other retailers have fairly similar revenue per square footage and revenue per store, except for Costco. Costco has a very high revenue per square foot and a very high revenue per store. But we know Costco needs to move that inventory that fast and that much because, remember, their gross profit margin is so low at 14%. So what do we learn from this problem? If your items don't move fast, you better be making a lot of money off of those items. If you have items that sell at a low gross profit margin, you better be turning them over. And that is the conclusion of the demonstration for problem 641.